On behalf of Naval Construction Wing, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you for today's lecture under the INA Technical Lecture Series. It gives us immense pleasure to host today's speaker, Commander R Jaikumar, retired, a distinguished naval architect, technology strategist, and defense sector consultant with an exceptional blend of operational, technical, and industry experience. Commander Jaikumar is currently serving as the domain lead for aerospace, defense, shipbuilding, and space at KPMG India. Over a professional journey spanning nearly 3 decades, including more than 21 years as a naval constructor officer in the Indian Navy, he has made significant contribution across warship design, stealth engineering, ship construction, trials, simulation-based engineering, and defense consulting. An alumnus of Cochin University of Science and Technology, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and Defense Institute of Advanced Technology, Commander Jaikumar holds a BTech in Naval Architecture and Shipbuilding, a PGDIT in Naval Construction, and an MTech in Mathematical Modeling and Computer Simulation, in which he was awarded the Gold Medal, reflecting his consistent academic and professional excellence. During his naval service, he served in key appointments at Naval Dockyard, Mumbai, Directorate of Naval Design, and Warship Overseeing Team, Mumbai. At the Directorate of Naval Design, he played an important role in the design and development of several landmark indigenous warship projects, including P-15 Alpha, P-15 Bravo, P-17 Alpha, P-28, and the Ocean Surveillance Ship Program, while also contributing to pioneering work in warship cost estimation and contracting. Following his retirement from the Navy, he transitioned into strategic consulting with KPMG, where he has led major engagements involving DRDO, defense PSUs, Ministry of Defense organizations, ports, shipyards, and private industry. Of particular significance is his contribution towards advising the Ministry of Port, Shipping, and Waterways on policy initiatives and support mechanism aimed at catalyzing the growth of commercial shipbuilding in India. Today, he will be delivering a lecture on the highly relevant and contemporary subject, catalyzing the growth of Indian shipbuilding industry, recent initiatives, and what more needs to be done. At a time when India is aspiring to emerge as a leading maritime power and a global manufacturing hub, the growth of indigenous shipbuilding assumes immense strategic, economic, and technological importance. We are certain that today's lecture will provide valuable insights into the evolving ecosystem of Indian shipbuilding, ongoing policy reforms, industry challenges, and the roadmap ahead. We are also particularly delighted that today's audience includes distinguished scientists from DRDO, eminent professors and academicians from IIT, senior naval officers, veterans, and professionals from across the maritime and defense ecosystem, whose presence adds immense value to this interaction. Additionally, for the first time under the INA lecture series, today's lecture is being streamed online, enabling members and professionals from outside Delhi to participate remotely and benefit from the discussions. We warmly welcome all participants joining us virtually as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Commander R Jaikumar for today's INA lecture.
Good morning. I hope this is... Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank INA and NCW and Admiral Bakshi for giving me this opportunity to come and speak here. It's been long overdue. I've been wanting to do this, but then I said, okay, at some point of time, this is an important topic to talk about, fundamentally because it's laying a foundation for a sort of a dream that was set long, long ago, and to a large extent put into place by this very hallowed hall where so many people have come out and contributed to the shipbuilding industry in some form or the other. My talk today is going to be about catalyzing the growth of Indian shipbuilding, commercial shipbuilding industry primarily. What are the recent initiatives and what is the road ahead that these initiatives are looking to set for all of us? So I'll quickly look at the background. So if you I don't want to talk too much about defense shipbuilding because we're doing very well in it. We are really, I would say with a lot of pride that we are one of the best shipbuilding nations in the world. And there is a lot that the Navy decided to do on its own 50, 60 years ago, and that is bearing fruit very successfully. But having said that, while defense shipbuilding has grown from strength to strength, For some reason, commercial shipbuilding has really not reached the kind of potential that it was supposed to for a country which was originally a big seafaring nation and has a huge history of shipbuilding for trade. Somehow we got left behind. And left behind just to, I use a lot of numbers. I believe in a lot of numbers. So numbers will tell you a very important story. We're somewhere 22nd in the world, and 22nd is not a good rank because we don't even contribute to, we contribute to less than 0.1% of the shipbuilding output annually in the world. It's hardly about 0.1 million GT, and you are nowhere close. And if you look at ship ownership also, almost 95% of our cargo is being carried by vessels owned by somebody and mostly built by somebody outside India. And if you look at even our own flagships, very small fraction of the ships are actually built in India. What is the end result? Because 95% of your cargo is being carried by somebody else, close to 75 to, this figure is a little old, it's about 90 billion now. Every year, we spend 90 billion for freight, for carrying our own cargo inside and outside India. Our fleet size is very small. Our overseas fleet capacity, like I told you, is only about 5% of the total fleet capacity that we have. That is 95% is being carried by vessels outside. There is too much of reliance on foreign fleets. Exim trade is growing. We are talking of multi-trillion economy. Multi-trillion economy is not going to come by a service sector alone. It has to be by manufacturing sectors, which means you need more manufacturing. You need more raw materials, input materials coming in, more finished goods going out, greater level of trade, and more importantly, a very high level of energy security. So if you're looking at a big manufacturing economy, it is not going to be possible without a robust sea trade system, which you have full control over. This is a very, very important. If you don't mind, I'll just walk around because I'm a little bit more comfortable. Please tell me if you can hear me. Yeah, okay. We, about 10, 12 years ago, about 10, 11% of our cargo used to be carried by our own ships. What happened was our cargo, because of economic growth and our trade requirements continuously increasing, the cargo that we are carrying kept increasing. But our fleet levels either remained the same or just kept dipping. So today we are somewhere here and less than 5% of our cargo is carried by our own flags. 95% is carried by somebody. If you don't do anything, if you leave the situation as it is, this will go and hit zero. Why? Because the amount of cargo that you're going to trade, we are looking at about 5,700 million metric tons per annum of cargo being carried by 2047 in the vision. If you correlate it with the economic growth that is required for the multi-trillion dollar economy in terms of the Amrit Kal vision, it is not possible without having this kind of trade. But if you don't do anything about your own fleet condition, you will probably hit zero. This is the picture that actually created alarm, because what it essentially tells you is you have absolutely no control over your own cargo. So today, if you have situations like Hormuz or any other situation across the world, strategically, your energy security, your trade, everything gets impacted if you don't have control over your own cargo. So this is the picture that actually set the alarm off in the government corridors, realizing that shipping is not just a business, it is a strategic, it's of huge strategic value. You look at our fleet. If you look at India's EXIM fleet profile, 32% plus 27% are effectively about 50% of the vessels are more than 15 years old, and most of them are more than 20 years old. And if you look at the coastal fleet, over 49% of the vessels are more than 20 years old. We have a very, very old fleet. If you look at, in comparison, what the developing and developed countries have, we are nowhere close. So you have, if you look at even the developing countries, there is very little which is more than 20 years, about 19% only. And if you look at developed countries, it's even better, 7%. So you have an extremely aging fleet, which has got very, very, as naval architects, all of you will know, and most engineers will know, older ships means higher maintenance costs, higher fuel costs, everything is larger. Effectively, you're paying higher and higher freight bills simply because your fleets are older. So if you look at the current scenario in shipbuilding, the three giants, the rest of the world is nowhere close. So you are looking at China with an output of 33 million GT per annum, Korea with an output of 25 million GT per annum, Japan with an output of 16 million GT per annum. In comparison, India is 0.1 million GT per annum, nowhere in the picture. Even countries like Philippines and Vietnam are way ahead. And this is the picture as on today. If you do not do anything, Philippines is probably going to hit 6 by 2047. Vietnam will reach 4. And you are nowhere close. So even smaller Asian economies are going to have better control of the shipbuilding industry as compared to you. So this is the second alarming picture that came up. So then, because of this, the vision came out that, okay, we better start doing something about it, because this is not going to be something that, we can live with forever. It's simply not a comfortable situation to be in. So that's when the MIV and MAKV came out. So the government set a vision that we have to be top 5 in shipbuilding and ship ownership by 2047, top 10 by 2030, both in ship ownership and shipbuilding. And the envisioned policies was that, we have to create capacity, we have to create demand, we have to create capabilities, we have to support in terms of subsidies, etc., so that we are able to reach a level of competitiveness. I'll come to that part, how we were stuck in a vicious cycle, and we were never able to get out of that vicious cycle. And the outcomes that are expected is about 4 to 5 million GT per annum. From point 1, that's a 450 times jump over the next 23 years. And of course, it has got a lot of potential to create demand right up to, something close to 237 billion USD. And also the same picture, we'll revisit it. So if you do something about it, you're currently at 5%. If you try and start putting support measures, you will probably reach a control level of about 7% of your fleet. It might look like a small number, but because the denominator is increasing, the jump that you have to make is huge. The number of vessels that you need to own to have this level of control is massive. 7% of 5,700 means your fleet has to go several times bigger. And in an optimistic scenario, which is the kind of control that, if you look at the history of China and Korea and Japan, when they were building their own fleets, etc., that is the level of control they started with in the first 15, 20 years of their programs. They have had support programs for the longest time. But at the very least, we have to be somewhere here. And this is what all those numbers that we spoke about, 4 to 5 million GT per annum, all this are derived from the fact that you need to own at least 7% of your fleet. Everything is related to finally control over your cargo. So if you have to do this is the target that we have been set. So based on the same plot that I'm talking about, assuming the fact that Philippines will reach here and Vietnam will reach here, and you have to grow. Somebody can say, why are you only targeting here? Why can't you target 15, 20 million? It's not practically possible. It's not practically possible. Practically, what is the best we can do is what we have tried to work out. So if you look at, in terms of ship ownership, we are currently 13.5 million, and we target to reach about a 35 million GT cumulative cargo capacity and 100 million GT cumulative cargo capacity. Not all of it can be built in India. That's very practical. 7%, 8% is what best you can do in India, but 100 million, from 13 million to 100 million, 6 times, 7 times fleet has to become bigger over the next 23 years. And shipbuilding, you are currently 22. So if you reach about 4.5 million GT per annum, at least a fraction of this can be built indigenously, if not entirely. Yes, sir. Sure. No, sir, they are building. So this is the building one, sir. They're building. They are not essential. This is building, sir. This is the shipbuilding chart. Sir, the logic is we have to own a fleet. The primary requirement is coming from here. Shipbuilding is derived from ship ownership. What is the demand for shipping drives what shipbuilding is. So our fundamental problem is our control over cargo. You need to own a large number of ships. The logic is, if you need to own a large number of ships, it makes fundamental economic sense to at least build a significant part of it locally. What Philippines and Vietnam are doing is they need not own ships, but they are supplying to the rest of the world. Now, India's situation, I'll come to that exactly. We are so poorly competitive. We are not able to currently capture we are able to capture only a very small portion of the global shipbuilding demand. That is demand for ships. The thing about ship ownership is, actually, there is nothing like a domestic market per se. You can build a ship anywhere, flag it anywhere, operate it between any two places in the world. So essentially, it's a completely globalized market. Most of them that is why buying ships from China, Japan, Korea. Of late, they are buying ships from Philippines and Vietnam and all these countries. Indian owned ships, sir. Indian made is even lesser. Indian owned ship, only of the total cargo as on today, only 5% is carried by ships which are flagged in India. And a smaller fraction of that 5% is what is built in India. So the Philippines and Vietnam are good shipbuilders. They are not really competing in the ship ownership market. For them, it's an industry to produce, to capture. For India, both are significant because our economic size and our cargo requirements, there is a great deal of ship ownership that is necessary. And for that ship ownership to be meaningful and sustainable, at least a significant part of the ship ownership should be met by domestic shipbuilding. So I will come to that vicious cycle next. So what was essentially happening was, there was not too much demand. Because there was lack of demand, there was no attractive value proposition that the Indian shipyards could offer. Because there was no attractive value proposition and there was no demand, nobody was willing to invest money in Indian shipbuilding, because they have to see demand. At the end of the day, when you look at it as a business, if they don't see demand, nobody is going to invest it. Because they were not investing, capabilities and capacities are not coming inside. Because capabilities and capacities were not coming inside, there was no global competitiveness. Because there was no global competitiveness, there was no demand. So we were just stuck in this cycle perpetually. So the only way you can break out of this cycle is to bring in disruptive, somewhat protectionist measures, which would help you break out of that cycle, at least in the short to medium term. How do you do it? You have to increase capacity, you have to increase capability, you have to support the industry through subsidies, and most importantly, which was never done before but is being attempted now, is at least in the short to medium term, stimulate by creating demand locally. So if you look at automobile industry, say several years ago, all of you would have wondered, why did the government come up with this ruling that if a vehicle is more than 15 years old, it's no longer pliable? There was a reason for it. It created demand. You were compelled to go buy again. So that is a way of boosting, or at least in the short to medium term, you are stimulating the market by creating demand to support it. So that's exactly what is required. So here, to break out of the cycle, in addition to building, supporting capacity, capability, offering subsidies, etc., you also have to create demand locally. So this is one of the biggest lessons or take forward that the kind of government kind of realized when they started making this entire scheme. So if you look at the shipbuilding outcomes, these are very important numbers. So you are, like I said, it's not possible to have your fleet has to grow from 1.5 million GT, coastal fleet, to 12.6 million GT. That's a huge problem again. The cheapest way of carrying cargo is by sea, except for the first mile and last mile connectivity part. You are over-reliant today to ship goods within India from place A to place B on road and rail. The load is very high, the costs are much higher. India has one of the highest logistics costs. The only way to reduce the logistic cost is to use coastal shipping. But the problem with coastal shipping is the first and last mile connectivity. So there is this whole entire Sagarmala program and all other programs are concentrating on trying to bridge that gap of that first and last mile connectivity so that your coastal fleet becomes really significant in transporting goods. So you can imagine a situation where your raw material is coming from, say, Maharashtra. Your production is happening in, say, a plant in Tamil Nadu or a plant in Andhra. If you do it by road, it's going to be significantly expensive. If you do it by sea, if you address the first and last mile connectivity, it becomes significantly cheaper. So that's one of the focus areas as far as the government is concerned. So coastal shipping, recently a coastal shipping act also has been passed to boost this. But the effect is from 1.5 million, you have to go to 12.6 million GT to meet the coastal shipping demand that is going to come up because of all this transition of goods within India. If you look at the EXIM, we are currently about 12 million. It has to become 88 million by 2047. Okay. So right now, our percentage of fleet sourced from abroad is 95. We are hoping that, over a period of time, we'll build in sufficient capacity and at least 67% of that can be built in India and 33% as far as the EXIM fleet is concerned. So effectively, what it translates it from 0.1 million, you will have to go to about 4.5 million GT. This is the number that I was talking about. 4.5 million GT by 2047. This will get you in the top 7. This will give you a reasonable control over your own fleet in terms of having your own vessels which are largely built in India. And the fleet size also becomes significantly larger. Of course, not everything can be achieved by building. I'll try and show you some. This is the plot. So this is only a certain part of it. If you don't do anything, the coastal fleet will decline like this. This blue charts that we're talking about. If you buy, some of it you will buy. So by buying, you will catch up. Buy means buy from the global market, buy second-hand vessels, etc. You will reach a certain level. A significant part of it, at least in the coastal part, can and should be achieved by domestic shipbuilding. Coastal ships are smaller. You don't require large shipyards. You don't require large dry docks, large building facilities. So it is possibly easier to target the coastal shipping fleet over the short to medium term at least, and sustain it to grow. We have shipyards which already have the capability to meet this requirement very easily. Of course, there are certain other government policies that need to come to, like for example, if you look at the US, they have something called the Jones Act. It's a very interesting act. There are lots of questions against it, but fundamentally what Jones Act said was, if cargo is to be carried from place A to place B inside the US, the ship that carries it has to be an American ship and it has to be built in America. Protectionist. So not too many people realize that one of the biggest capitalist countries has got a lot of protectionist measures in their own system, because that is the nature of shipbuilding and shipping. So you might be extremely open market in every other places, but this is an industry which requires a certain amount of protectionism. And if you look at China, Japan, Korea, all of the cases, their industry grew largely because of fundamental protectionist mechanisms being in place and continuing to stay in place even today. So this is about the coastal fleet. If you look at EXIM fleet, we don't have the capacity to build very large vessels as of now. So in the short to medium term, you would largely be relying on buying from outside. But once we are able to build capacity by setting up larger shipyards, other than possibly Cochin Shipyard and Swan, you cannot build VLCCs anywhere. You cannot build Suezmax or Panamax carriers anywhere in India. You don't have the capacity yet. You have to set up new shipyards to do that. So till the time you reach there, you buy, and once you reach that level, say in 5-6 years, you are in a position to start building. So this is largely the blueprint in terms of how do you build your fleet and how much of that fleet do you build by building in India. So why is it important? A lot of people will ask. These were questions which were asked by several people. Some very esteemed economists even asked, what is the point? What is the gain in doing shipbuilding in India? Why can't you buy vessels? It's not possible to make everything in India. Sometimes you have to buy stuff from outside. This is a very common argument that people ask. Why is it required? Somebody can say, ship ownership, I understand. But you buy the ship from China, no, buy the ship from some other country. Why do you have to build it here? There is a reason why you have to build it here. This is the reason. If you look at how much it contributes to the economy, one of the most important factors, I think, So it has significant addition to the GDP. There are huge forex saving, etc. that you will do. Overall investments have significant multiplier effect. If you look at the employment multiplier, 6.82. It is the highest industry, higher than construction, higher than auto, higher than any other industry. For every job in a shipyard, nearly 1. 2, it has an investment multiplier about 2, effectively 1.8 to 2, which means every rupee you invest in a shipyard, it automatically stimulates an investment in other industry, double of that. So these are all huge advantages to the economy. And as a maritime nation relying heavily on trade, there is a large importance into the strategic maritime economy also. There is a larger revenue to the government that is possible. Revenue sharing from the clusters which are going to be created is all going to come. There is increased tax tonnage collection because of higher fleet ownership. And most importantly, for a country of where we talk very, very proudly about our demographic advantage, we have a huge workforce. Where are the jobs for the workforce going to come from? Of course, there are other challenges to it, which I'll cover separately. It has the highest potential to create jobs. So if you look at it from an overall strategic and economic perspective, and not just look at it from a purely business perspective, it is one of the highest, an industry which automatically promotes a very high level of, closed loop economic growth. So to make this happen, the government came up with a 4-pillar approach. I'll briefly tell you about what are the schemes that have come out. We were fortunate enough to be part of the whole exercise, KPMG and my team, and I was leading the team, advising the government to come out with all of these measures. A lot of stakeholders were consulted, the shipyards were consulted, ship owners were consulted, other government agencies were consulted. We took a lot of lessons from China, Japan, Korea, US, etc. And over a lot of churn involving Niti Aayog, Ministry of Finance, etc., we were able to come out with a very robust policy, which wouldn't say covers everything, but to a large extent tries to address the problem holistically rather than in bits and pieces. So there are the 4 pillars. The first pillar is what we will typically call a shipbuilding financial assistance scheme. This is essentially to support shipbuilding projects from the supply side. One of the biggest problems that Indian shipyards face today is competitive pricing. At least 25 to 30% cost disadvantage we have compared to, say, China, Japan, and Korea, to the point that Indian business houses who want to build ships don't want to build vessels in India. They want to go and build it in China simply because it's more expensive to build vessels in India, which might sound counterintuitive, but that is the truth. So how do you support it? So the one part of the scheme is to address that part. But that only takes care of one part of the problem, which is the supply side in terms of competitiveness. Then the biggest problem that most shipyards and ship owners had was, if you go to a bank and say, I want a loan to buy a ship, there was no way possible. You could not use ship as a collateral. There was hardly, capital funding was not available, working capital funding was not available. Shipyards today, except if you are a very big shipyard with some government backing, etc., shipyards struggle to get loan, struggle to get any kind of capital support. Compare it to Korea, Japan, 2% interest loans. Can you just imagine what competition we are facing? Japan and Korea, you get interest loans at 2 and 3%. China, no questions asked funding from the government. You build a ship, I'll pay you. That's literally the way they talk. And here, you go to the bank, they won't give you a loan. If they give you a loan, they'll give you a loan at 11, 12%. Do you think a business is going to be sustainable after that? Not possible. So then the government said, okay, we have to find a way to make access to capital a little easier, if not absolutely easy, as best as possible. So that's how the Maritime Development Fund came. 25,000 crore has been allocated. I'll talk about that particular scheme separately. Third part is, okay, we address the supply side with SBFAS. We address the capital funding and access to capital with the MDF. But that's not enough. We don't have capacity. We don't have capability. We talked about it. We cannot build big vessels. Our output currently is about 0.1. Even if all the existing shipyards do extremely well. And the fact is, most of the shipyards are currently engaged in naval shipbuilding. So a huge part of the capacity is taken up by naval shipbuilding. So practically, you have only about 0.5, 0.6 million GT output possible, assuming that the existing capacity is operating at the highest efficiency. So if you have to reach 4.5, you need to create additional capacity. But additional capacity, again, same loop, you will get stuck. So to create capacity, you have to facilitate creation of big shipyards and shipbuilding clusters. Existing shipyards, they want to expand. So you have to support schemes by facilitating brownfield expansion of existing shipyards. And that's not enough. Skills, which we were just discussing before we got in. Huge problem. You are looking at 4.5 million GT per annum. We are talking about multiplier effect of 6.8, 7. Yeah, we will create jobs, but are there people available to man the jobs? No. So we have to come up with some way to support skilling and development of the human resource to meet this kind of demand that we are looking to create. And last is, of course, in addition to all of this, there have to be other measures related to policies, or some of us who have dealt with shipyard projects and tax and all. There is a huge problem called inverted tax structure. I'm not sure if all of you are aware. The input tax is varying. Sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 18%. The tax on the finished vessel is 5%. So when you try to claim input credit, there's a huge problem. Always a problem. So you're not able to accumulate enough credit to be able to claim it fully. So every shipyard is suffering because of that. It happens even in naval projects. So that's a long-term thought process that needs to be addressed through policy reform. So these are the 4 pillars that we were talking about. I'll first talk about the shipbuilding financial assistance. About 25,000 crore has been allocated. What does it do? So there are two sub-elements to it. And it's a very, I would say it's a very creative part of this whole scheme. One is supporting shipbuilding activity. The other is a shipbreaking credit note scheme. I'll explain both. Shipbuilding activity in the sense means, if you build a vessel and the cost of the vessel or the cost of the project is say 100 crores. Anywhere, depending on the size and type of the vessels, you can get anywhere close to 15 to 25% of that value as direct support from the government, which means it's 100 crore vessel, anywhere between 15 to 25 crores, government will just pay you. If you're a shipyard, if you win a contract and you execute and complete that vessel. So this is like a subsidy scheme, but it is essentially a financial assistance for the shipyard to be able to build a vessel and remain reasonably competitive in an extremely competitive market. The second aspect is simultaneously trying to boost our shipbreaking industry and also using that to create demand for the shipbuilding industry. That is the shipbreaking credit note scheme, which means if you are a ship owner, you have an old ship, you go to one of the Indian shipbreaking yards and you break it, and you get a certain value for it. A certain fraction of that value you will get as a credit note, additional credit note from the government. That credit note, you can go and use it in any other Indian shipyard to build a new vessel. Like, for example, you broke a vessel and say that after breaking, the cost was say 40 crores, and a certain percentage of it you get, say 25%, 10 crores or something you get. 5 crores or 10 crores you get as credit note. That 5 crore or 10 crore, you can go and use it when you're building a new vessel, which means if the new vessel costs 100 crores, 10 crore is already paid for through the credit note. So both from the financial assistance side and from the shipbreaking side, you are trying to incentivize domestic shipbuilding as much as possible by cutting the competitive disadvantage as much as possible. While simultaneously, yeah. No, grant. 100% grant, no loan. Straight payment. If you have a 1,000 crore contract, anywhere between 150 to 250 crore, you will straight away get. But there are conditions. It's available only for commercial vessels. It's not available for defense vessels. No, it is in stages. When you win a contract, you get some money, and the entire thing you will get only after the vessel is delivered. Not still last year, last 10 years. But you want to know the uptake. These were questions which Niti Aayog was asking me. 4,000 crore was allocated in 2015-16. By 2023, when we are building, the uptake was 400 crore. Government is saying you have not spent money, why are you asking for more money? Why? I mean, I can't talk of SBFAS. I can't talk of SBFAP, the old scheme. This scheme, you are getting confidence. I mean, the moment you sign a contract, some part of it is already given to you. You are assured. If you build and deliver the vessel, 100% you are going to get anywhere between 15 to 25%. That assurance is there. No, I mean, off the record, I will tell you, old scheme, some of the complaints were the red tape was very large. It was very difficult to. So I'll tell you. So the problem was not, that's why I said, the problem was not that the scheme didn't exist. How will you claim SBFAP if there is no demand? You will claim SBFA if you have an order. If you are not able to get order, how will you get it? So the problem was, that is why we did not, that's the problem. The last scheme addressed one part of the issue. Today we are talking about addressing it holistically, which means you bring SBFAP, you bring shipbreaking credit note. In parallel, you support capacity creation, capability creation. In parallel, you support debt funding, equity funding. In parallel, you also support by creating demand, at least in the short to medium term. So unless you address all of it holistically, this was never going to get solved. The reason why there was poor uptake was capacity was created, but they were finding it impossible to win orders. So they were not able to claim. So now you see, after the scheme, just to give you, 8 years, the uptake was only 400 crore. Last 2 years, that 400 has become 2,000 because that confidence level is building. You see, so many shipyards have won so many orders in the recent past. So it is largely related to demand. Now the demand is getting created. See, the problem was the crib from the industry, and the industry's fair crib was even Indian business houses were not placing orders on them. They were going to China. So that is changing now. So I will quickly go through just for eligibility, etc. I'm just reproducing the scheme. I don't want to spend too much time in that. If you have an agreement in place, you're eligible. If you're an Indian shipyard registered, meet all the conditions, and you have an agreement in place, you're straight away eligible for getting the subsidy. Vessels that are included. Basically, the focus is on large commercial vessels and specialized vessels. These are all included. These are all included. I don't want to spend too much time. This is all part of the guidelines. It's available. But just to tell you the range that has been covered in all of this. And of course, for green and alternative fuel vessels, they are giving higher importance. 25% subsidy you will get if you, particularly for green and alternate fuel vessels and some of the specialized vessels that I listed earlier. The small crafts and supporting vessels will be eligible to up to 15% of the subsidy. See, there are different schemes to address that. In terms of SBFAP is concerned, fundamentally, like I said, the genesis of this is how do you support your own fleet capacity, which is large vessels. While small MSMEs are affected, it is not that they're kept out of the scheme. The subsidy that is available to them is ranging from 15 to 25%. If they build a small vessel, but it's an electric tug, they'll get 25%. If it's a small vessel, but it's a very, very specialized vessel, they'll get 25%. Green alternate fuel vessel, they'll still get 25%. A conventional ship, a barge or something will attract 15%. But the subsidy is still available. The point is, see, we are not, it's not possible to solve all problems simultaneously. So we have to look at it progressively. And what is the most important need was, we are significantly lacking in our ability to build and deliver vessels for our own need, the larger cargo vessels. So they have been given importance, but it's not that the others have been left out. No. No. Harbor crafts, tugs. See, today, many of the small and medium-sized shipyards can build all these vessels. They are building. They were not building because of competitive cost disadvantage. So with a 15% cost advantage, they will be able to compete and win those orders locally also. And if it's a green tug or an alternate fuel propelled tug or an alternate fuel propelled special, any other vessel, you'll get 25% subsidy. Even if you're a small yard whose capacity is only to build, say, 50 meters or 40 meter or 30 meter vessel, you'll still get it. So the idea is, as much of the industry as that can be covered has been covered. But government, as a government, and I don't represent the government here, but I'll tell you where the government is coming from. They have to put some priority somewhere. They don't have a blank check to support everybody the way China is supporting. It's not possible. We are a balanced economy. We have other things also to take care of. So if you look at it from that perspective. So I'll just quickly go through, these are all eligibility. I don't want to spend too much time on it. All this is available online in the guidelines. Just to tell you that, everything has been taken care of. Things like, trying to build in some discipline. You can't have an open-ended contract that, you build the vessel for 7 years, 8 years. You have to finish the project in a certain time to be eligible. So some amount of discipline has also been built in. So how it works is, if it's a small vessel, like I said, if the value is less than 100 crore, you straight away get 15% of the actual value. If it's a large normal vessel, not a specialized vessel in that categorization, for the first 100, you'll get 15%. Any value above 100, you'll get 20%. And if it's a specialized vessel, first 100, you'll get 15%. Balance, you'll get 25%. Slab scheme, essentially. So even no matter what, unless you're making a small boat or something, no matter which ship you build, you will get anywhere between 15 and 25%. Of course, these are all some checks and balances built in, because what is a fair price? On what value will it be given? It's not like you won't conclude a contract at any price and then you will get it straight away. It has to be evaluated, and there will be an independent agency which will evaluate and tell whether the price that it's been concluded is a fair price or not. All these subsidies applicable on that fair price only. Defense vessels are exempt, except in foreign export. Indian defense vessels are obviously exempt because money is going from one pocket to another pocket. So it doesn't make sense to subsidize that. But if an Indian shipyard wins a foreign order, take out the value of the weapons and systems in it, the rest of the platform costs, using some method to determine what that cost is, that will be eligible for subsidy. Again, quantum of financial assistance, it will be the lowest of the quantum. These are just fundamental rules. I'll quickly go through them. This is the big change, the question that you are asking. 30% on key laying, 40% on launching, 30% on delivery, post-delivery security is released. This was not there before. So this is going to make a huge difference. Of course, there are protection mechanisms in place in terms of bank guarantee, etc. So that you have to encourage the good ones and also ensure that somebody doesn't, take unfair advantage of the scheme. There are other benefits. So there is DG Shipping has set up agencies for empaneled agencies to do this valuation process and also the verification process, so that it doesn't become an impediment. There is too much red tape, but there are sufficient checks and balances in place to ensure that the scheme is executed the way it is envisaged to be executed. The second part is the shipbreaking credit note. This also quickly, I explained it before. I'll quickly go through. Scrap value, whatever scrap value you take based on an LDT, you get a certain scrap value. From the scrap value, shipbreaking credit note, 40% of the scrap value you will get. Suppose you broke the vessel and you say it costs 20 crores. You got 20 crores for the vessel. 5 crore you will straight away get us, 20 crore, 40% is 8 crores you will get straight away as credit note. That 8 crore, you can go to an Indian shipyard. You suppose order a new vessel which costs 100 crores. You will get SBFAS separately. In addition, you will get another 8 crore credit because of this. So here it is, it is stackable, it is transferable. You are the old ship owner. You broke it. You don't intend to buy a new vessel. I can sell the credit note to somebody who intends to buy the new vessel. I can stack it. I can accumulate 2-3 credit notes and take it and encash it, subject to a maximum of, I think, 5 crore or something like that. There is a cutoff that is set. So it is stackable, it is transferable, it is made as flexible as possible so that there are no unnecessary red tapes in place. So that's regarding SBFS. This is regarding the Maritime Development Fund. This is essentially the access to debt and equity. Okay. So there are two components to it. One is the Maritime Investment Fund. The government has set aside 20,000 crore, out of which 9,800 crore government itself is pumping in. The balance will be raised from investors, institutional investors, foreign investors, etc. There will be a fund. I'll explain that. There will be a fund manager who will be funding it, and that fund is being used to give out debt, give out equity funding to different people. It's suppose equity financing for the maritime sector. Then there is an interest incentivization scheme for which the government has set aside 5,000 crore. Up to 3% of the interest will be incentivized. I'll explain that as we come down. Key focus areas, like I said, increasing Indian ship ownership, developing shipyards, port and port link infrastructure, modal share of coastal. So all of these will get covered under this. If you are falling in one of these categories, you will be eligible to get equity funding or debt funding, depending on what you want to do. So it's a blended finance structure that is adopted with varying returns and terms. The logic is the government is not expecting, government is putting 9,800 crore in the equity fund, but government is not expecting a very high return, which means the government has a 49% share, somebody has a 51% share. If the government expectation is low, even if the market expectation is high, the effective interest that, or the effective expectation of return on interest that is expected is somewhat reasonable and not like the actual market value. So effectively, government is, in a way, subsidizing the access to capital. So government is not expecting more than 2% on return, just to give you an idea. So even if the investor is expecting 12, 13, 14% interest, effective interest will come down to say 5 or 6%, which is significantly better than market rates. So this is the structure, 51% at commercial rate, 49% government is funding at a very low rate. These are the priority sectors. So tomorrow you are a shipyard, you want equity funding. You can go approach. So you're setting up a new shipyard. You can go approach this. The government will give you equity funding. They'll take a share in your shipyard and by investing certain amount, and that equity is calculated based on how much equity funding you're seeking. We'll go to interest incentivization is simply you take loan from somebody, up to 3% of the interest will get incentivized. So the government is going to give that corpus to the lending institution. You go, if you're a ship owner or a shipbuilder, you go borrow for shipyard or for working capital, whatever be the debt scheme you're seeking. On that, up to 3% of the interest, subject to a cap of, I think it's in the next slide. I forgot. Yeah, there is. Yeah, maximum interest is up to 3% of that loan will get of the interest will get incentivized, which means the government is going to pay the bank. You don't have to pay the bank that component of the interest. So it is limited to 5,000 crore. It is going to be implemented through the Sagarmala Finance Corporation. The guidelines have been published for this. So this is the end-to-end process. You are a borrower shipyard, you borrow it from a bank. Once the loan application is given, the implementing authority will assess eligibility for interest incentive and then release the interest incentive to the shipyard. So up to 3% will get incentivized on account of this. So that's the MDF scheme in short. The next is probably extremely important because this is talking about capacity development and capability development. So government has set aside about 20,000 crore capital support for shipbuilding clusters, green clusters which I was talking about. We're looking at creating capacity to the tune of 4.5, 0.6 from existing shipyards itself, plus roughly about 3.9 through at least 3 clusters with each with an output of 1.2 to 1.3 million GT per annum. The government has set aside 9,930 crores for this. What it will fund, I'll explain to you. How the cluster is going to work, that also I'll explain subsequently. If you're an existing shipyard, and you want to do brownfield expansion, which means you have a shipyard, you want to create additional facility, you want to build a new dry dock, build a new slipway, build a new ship lift system. There also, funding is possible. Government will fund up to 25% of your capital expenditure with a cap of 1,500 crore. Plus, there is 305 crores set aside for developing capabilities in design, R&D, engineering, testing, etc. And about 1,443 crore, which is a huge problem that shipyards face, is credit risk. I'll explain that also. In the sense in that today, other than builder's risk insurance, there is no insurance product which is available in the market which protects a shipbuilder from risks like some foreign owner or somebody placed an order on you and then refuse to take delivery of the ship, you are stuck with the ship. You placed an order on some guy to supply an equipment. That guy says, I cannot supply anymore. Your shipbuilding is stuck, everything is stuck. These are all actual business risks. But there is no product that is currently available to cover these kind of risks. The government is funding this, and through certain insurance agencies like EC, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation of India, and NIA, trying to create specific insurance products which will cover these unique risks which are very endemic to shipbuilding and not necessarily existing in other industries. And here it is even more pronounced because the values are very large. The risks is huge. There are cases where, the ship owners will give you 10% advance and then balance 100% on delivery. So shipyard has to take a huge amount of risk. And in those situations, if he defaults, if that guy says, no, I'm not taking, it's happened to MDL. I'm not sure you're aware. They built some 2 multi-purpose vessels several years ago. And the chap refused to take, and finally they found another seller to sell it. But till then, the ship is stuck, so much of your investment is stuck, you're incurring huge losses. That's a huge risk. So this is a scheme which will cover those kind of risks. So greenfield clusters, it provides capital. Essentially, what it says is, roughly, these are all ballpark figures, these are not exact figures. 3 clusters are expected to be created with waterfront of over 2 kilometers, 2,000 acres of land, out of which at least 1,000 acres is used for shipbuilding, another 1,000 acres for ancillary industry. Output is roughly about 1.2 to 1.3 million GT per annum. The government, how the government is going to operate is, a central government agency and a state government agency will form an SPV. The SPV will own the land or will have control over the land and will facilitate fundamental development of the land in terms of certain common marine infrastructure like breakwater, dredging. All the costs will be funded, all the costs of that common infrastructure will be funded by the scheme. Once the breakwater, dredging, approach channel, leveling of the land, access, road, rail, all that is sorted out, all the shipyard has to worry about is only come and set up a shipyard. He doesn't have to worry about creating a breakwater, he doesn't have to worry about dredging, he doesn't have to worry about creating a channel or access route, separately look for somebody to create social infrastructure, etc. So Government is going to take care of all that common. Only the shipyard infrastructure he needs to invest. So the SPV, how the SPV will work is this fund will flow through the SPV. The SPV will own the land and he will provide the land on lease to whichever shipbuilder is coming and setting up the shipyard in that area. The shipyard owner will keep paying a lease. The SPV will operate and maintain the common facilities in that feature. All the funding for the common features will flow through SPV. And of course, for maintenance, the SPV will also earn some revenue by charging some element of the rent towards maintenance. Some of the, while there are certain funds have been allocated, there is always scope that, these are based on some initial estimates. There is always scope for expansion. So the capital support will be provided for the SPV to create all of this. Breakwaters, basins, channels, land reclamation, regional capability development center, some amount of internal infrastructure, social infrastructure, etc., external trunk connectivity, etc., will be funded separately by Ministry of Road Transport, Highways and Railways. Suppose for the cluster, you need approach roads, you need rail tracks and all. That this scheme is not covering, but separately MORTH and railways will cover it. This is just how the approval process works. I'll quickly run through it. You have to apply, the SPV has to apply through a certain route. Through DGS, there has to be a techno-economical feasibility study. Once that is found valid, you get an in-principle approval. Once you get an in-principle approval, you have to find an anchor shipyard. Once you find an anchor shipyard, you come back with a form proposal and a DPR, you will get final approval and the funding to the SPV will come after this. It will be released in 4 tranches. The milestone progress is verified through an independent agency, whether the actual construction is happening the way it is envisaged. There will be a single window clearance that this SPV is expected to set up. So your environmental clearance, state government clearance, power supply, water, etc., all done, facilitated by the SPV. There are certain other features. There is an independent evaluation agency which will evaluate the DPR. There will be an independent project monitoring agency which will be established to physically verify that the construction of the common facility is happening the way it is expected to. Typically, a 6-year lease model is expected from the SPV to whichever shipbuilder is coming in. Currently, this is roughly the blueprint of what a typical cluster will look like. It is supposed to house the anchor shipyard, certain ancillary industries, certain trunk and social infrastructure, and certain common facilities. So, effectively, the common infrastructure and common facilities will get funded by the government. The trunk and social infrastructure, either the SPV or the state government will facilitate. The ancillary industries, like any other industrial park development program, the SPV will seek equipment manufacturers to come and set up shop, whether it's an engine manufacturer, pump manufacturer, valve, electrical equipment manufacturer, etc. So the idea is the cluster to become somewhat self-sufficient in terms of an ecosystem which houses the shipbuilding facility plus the ancillary industry facility. At least, if not everything, at least a significant part of the ancillary industry. And also the sufficient social infrastructure and test facilities, etc., are also available in one place. So roughly 9,930 crore, which is about 3,300 crore per cluster, the government is already looking at funding. And like I said, depending on what actually turns up during the DPR, the government is open to funding more too. These are the 5 places where currently studies are going on. There is one in Kendrapada on the mouth of the Mahanadi River. There is one in Dugirajapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. You might have read in the news, Hyundai is very interested in investing in Thoothukudi to set up a mega shipyard there. Maharashtra is doing studies in 2 or 3 places. Gujarat is doing studies in 2 or 3 places. So effectively, while 5 states are looking at it, practically it looks like maybe 3 or 4 clusters may come up. And this is the brownfield scale that I spoke about. This is essentially to help existing shipyards to expand their capabilities in terms of production infrastructure. It is applicable to shipyards, their subsidiaries, etc. 25% of the funding, 25% of the capital expenditure would be funded with a cap of 1,500 crore per shipyard. These are certain rules. I mean, I'll not spend too much time on them. It's available in the guidelines. But again, here also there are sufficient checks and balances to ensure that the scheme is utilized properly. You have to create that infrastructure within a certain period of time. There are intermediate checks and balances which are put in place to ensure that you don't set up and then sell off the shipyard and run away. So all that is taken care of. What as far as brownfield is concerned, if you are looking at creating waterfronts or dye berthing facilities or wet berthing facilities, fabrication erection facilities, etc., material handling facilities, all of this will get covered as part of brownfield expansion. So if you are looking, any existing shipyard is looking to create any of this additionally, this will get funded under the scheme. I'll quickly go through this 25%, how it will be. These are just fundamental rules. Again, it's not you create the facility, I'll pay. No. We are understanding the fact that the industry doesn't have that kind of cash flow. So it will be paid in tranches linked to specific milestones. So the checks and balances are important. Government money is being spent, but sufficient care has been taken to ensure that there is no actual or perceived red tape. It makes it as industry friendly as possible. Again, there are independent evaluating agencies, independent project monitoring agencies, etc., which are going to be set up, which are going to be utilized for verifying that the project is going on the way to disaster progress. This is the credit risk cover schemes. Essentially, structured insurance products for pre-shipment risks, post-shipment risks, and vendor default risks. These are, like I said, other than builder's risk insurance, there was no product available in the industry. So we are creating special products through ECGC's export credit for any export-related risk. A vessel owner ordering from outside, or you're ordered for an equipment from outside, those will be covered by ECGC. Domestic risk will be covered by NIA. So there is an affordable premium structure. Some of it will get funded because it is supported. Part of the premium, there are different models possible. It is still a work in progress. Either the government will fund a part of the premium through the scheme, or the government will cover certain risks when the risk actually materializes. So that is being worked out by the insurance agencies. They are best placed to develop a very highly customized product. The moot point is, a huge amount of the risks that shipyards are facing is going to get covered by the scheme. Okay. This is related to skilling initiatives. So if you look at, just to tell you, most of us have been in this field, we know. Indian Apprentice Act recognizes about 181 trades. Out of 181, 46 are directly related to shipbuilding. That is how vast and diverse shipbuilding is. But the flip side of it is, if you're looking to grow at this level, do you have enough blue collar and white collar skill that is available? The answer is no. It's a huge problem. It is not easy to get skilled. Somebody who's coming out of a BTech or somebody who's coming out of an ITI is not actually prepared to straight away start working in shipyards, simply because the jump up that is required from conventional training to the specialized training required for shipbuilding is not currently existing, except in certain shipyards and dockyards where they have their own apprentice schools. That transition bridge program exists in those cases. But for the scale that we're looking at, I will come to the numbers subsequently. We don't currently have any training mechanism or a skilling mechanism in place. So if you look at all of this, so how the scheme is looking at it is, how to develop it is, you train at ITIs and polytechnics. Then either anywhere between 6 months to 1 year, you actually get trained in a shipyard, wherein the transition happens from just an ITI skilled welder or fabricator to somebody who knows how to work specifically to meet the requirements of the shipbuilding industry. And then once that transition happens, then you will get them employed in different shipyards. So this is broadly how the scheme is envisaged. The challenges in this is, how do you convince people to go through this? So this is something that we were talking about. If you look at what is happening in today, whether it's blue collar or white collar, because of the boom in IT, AI, etc., 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 not too many people are willing to invest their future in manufacturing. So that is going to be a huge challenge. So that is where, how do you attract talent to come here? Which part, where do you go and pitch these kind of transition programs and schemes? is the thought process. So if you look at where the clusters are coming up, the fundamental thought process is, if you are able to attract labor from somewhere close, like in Thuthukudi or in Dugirajapatnam or in Kendrapada or somewhere near Kandla, locally able to generate interest amongst the talent, then you house these training and transition programs within the cluster. Largely, of course, they will also be distributed to other existing shipyards. Then, a self-sufficient economy with the secure social infrastructure in place will probably encourage more people to think about at least transitioning to a manufacturing career rather than an IT or an AI career. Same thing, this is an apprenticeship program, this is an internship program where, naval architects, mechanical engineers, electrical, electronic engineers, BTechs, MTechs doing work in some other industry. 1 year transition program through the DGS certified. The Indian Maritime University is also working on it. There is going to be a separate organization which is going to be set up, which I'll talk about it now. So that will help in the transition from just engineers to engineers who are able to work in the shipbuilding manufacturing ecosystem, not just shipbuilding and shipbuilding ancillary also. So if you look at, like I said, I already covered each of the present gaps, where they are. If you look at the numbers, you need about 30,000 blue-collar workforce by 2030. And you need 1.5 lakh blue-collar workers by 2047. Currently, we have hardly 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 blue-collar workers and maybe 2,000, 3,000 white-collar workers at most. Not even 2,000. Maybe if you put shipyards plus design houses, all of them together, take Navy out of the equation. You put shipyards, design houses, all of them together, commercial shipbuilding, there is hardly 300, 400 people working. You need 2,000 white collar by 2030 and about 10,000 white collar by 2047. So you have to create a pipeline to make this work. Otherwise, all the capacity that you're creating, all the other schemes that you're creating will simply not take off. This is not at risk. So some of the action plans is they are looking at specifically identifying ITIs and prepping them, coastal ITIs, and prepping them in advance to kind of prime the candidates to say, there is a particular manufacturing career that is possible here, and try and train them specifically for this at the ITI level itself. And then shipyard specific courses to be introduced in ITS. Discussions are going on with the respective skill development ministry, etc. And within the clusters and within shipyards, some amount of modern training infrastructure to be created. So if you, there are certain schemes which exist. There is a national apprenticeship promotion scheme. There is a Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, and then there is a Prime Minister internship scheme. All these schemes are already facilitating payment of apprenticeship and internships to people who are coming and working in any industry. So currently, MOPSW is working with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Ministry of Energy, Development and Entrepreneurship. Funding is available, but funding is available through another ministry. Now it's a question of using that to channel to specific shipbuilding related skilling and training. So there is an organization called ISTC which is going to be set up. I'll come to that later. Yeah. So how do you use these existing internship and apprentice schemes? See, if a guy is coming and working with you for a year, you're giving him a job guarantee, but for that year also, you need to be able to support it. So that is where they are looking at these schemes to provide. So like if you look at the PMIS scheme, somewhere close to 9,000 rupees per apprenticeship is paid through the scheme. Part of it is 50% is paid by the government, and 50% the shipyard which is offering the internship is expected to pay. We are looking at ways and means if this can be further enhanced, but currently the idea is to use the existing schemes as best as possible to fund these internship and apprenticeship programs. There are other global collaborations, India and Korea. There is an organization called KOICA, which is cooperating with the Indian Maritime University and CSL for skilling initiatives over the next 5 years. About 4,000 candidates are expected to be trained at Kochi. Government of Korea has approved it and they're funding a large part of this. India and UAE have recently signed an agreement for some amount of training program for specialized cases. Design. This is another separate problem by itself. In the Navy, you would have dealt with several, because most of these design houses are doing work for naval projects also. There are about 20-25 companies in the ecosystem. The revenue is 160. If you look at our shipbuilding industry, it's hardly anything. They are not very well supported. The costs are very high. The operational costs are extremely high because software and all is not cheap. They don't have enough work as of now, and it's not easy to keep them sustaining. The hope is that the scale comes in with commercial shipbuilding, with large, wider and number and types of vessels increasing. So the work will come in. But if that is addressing one part of it. But the other part of it is skill available for taking on that work. That is where we are looking at how do you empower these private agencies and make it more attractive for them to attract talent themselves and sustain the skill levels that are necessary for sustaining the industry as a whole. Lot of dependency on foreign software. There is infrastructure shortfall. There is not much investment in R&D or innovation or any development that happens. So aware, got a facility, but testing is so loaded with defense programs and testing that hardly any slot is available for somebody to go and do more testing somewhere. How do you manage? Is it possible to find time slots? Is it possible to help NSTL find time additional slots to use that facility for commercial shipbuilding testing also? That's a question in progress. We are also looking at enhancing how the test facilities at IIT Kharagpur and IIT Madras can be used. Plus all other IITs also. Model testing is just one part. There are several other elements of testing that needs to be done. So comprehensively, this is all. There is an organization which is being set up called the Indian Ship Technology Center, which is expected to coordinate all of these efforts to bring in all these test institutions and use the existing facilities as much as possible in the best, most optimal way possible amongst NSTL, all the IITs, ISC, etc., to ensure that the design and testing ecosystem is reasonably robust. So the ISTC is going to be set up as a Section 8 company. There is a budget allocation that has been sought for this. Currently, the stakeholders include Cochin Shipyard, IMU, IMDA, Shipbuilders, Shipyard Association of India, etc. One of the major schemes that is the 305 crore that we talked about, one of the major schemes that is being mooted as part of this is license sharing based access to software. I'll talk about it. Software access as a service. So if procurement of the software is very expensive, what if you have some agency which procures the software and either through a cloud network or through any other network allows anybody who wants to use it on a time share basis at a very nominal cost. License is shared, right? There's a floating license that is available. License is shared as and when, and based on how much you actually use the software, you are charged a nominal price. The cost of acquiring the software is taken away from you. So this scheme is looking at setting up something like this, primarily to provide access to the design houses and the smaller shipyards which don't have the kind of capital that is required to acquire and purchase and operate this software. So that software access as a service, the software access as a service is being mooted right now. Some amount of testing facilities exist, but there are still gaps. Even in Navy, I'm sure we are, for naval projects also, there is a lot of struggle in getting a lot of things tested even today. So to develop some sort of test facilities which can be housed inside the clusters itself, that is also being considered as part of this scheme. The last pillar is, of course, the legal and policy process reforms. Here, there is not much except the fact that, demand aggregation. So this is a protectionist measure that has come. The government is saying, essentially told our oil PSUs and some of the other major ministries, which are customers for cargo carriage, to think about the fact that they should own their own vessels. That is where the whole thing started. So, like I talked about, and at least in the short to medium term, you have to spur demand by creating demand locally. That is where this scheme is coming into play. Somewhere more than 350 vessels. Right now, the number has gone past 400 also. From Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, steel, coal, fertilizers, all of them, they are looking at ways sort of a local demand is being created for all of this. The other good news is in 2025, finally government granted infrastructure. So, access to long-term low-cost financing. Tender will be clear. so far. So ownership became a little easier now. So demand aggregation, this is the most important part. We are, during the India Maritime Week, this was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. The domestic fleet acquisition plan was announced. So this is an initial plan. We are looking at somewhere 437 vessels to be acquired over the next 10 to 15 years. Roughly about 19 million GT. And literally as per created demand of 2.2 lakh crore. Of course, there will be challenges in the sense the demand exists, capability has to come up in parallel. Will all of them be built in India is not a question that we can answer right away. But the idea is to build as many vessels of these as possible locally. At least the medium-sized and the small-sized vessels where capability and capacity already exists, it should be possible to build in India. The larger vessels, the VLGCs, the ultra max tank container vessels, etc. Maybe it will take a few years, except for Swan and CSL, nobody has the capability right now. Maybe it will take a few years to build up that kind of capability and capacity. But if you look at it in the long run, the medium to long term, next 10 to 15 years, 437 vessels is reasonably good local spur of demand, which is expected to stimulate the industry to reach a level of competence that, okay, maybe in the next 15 to 20 years, you don't need to create demand locally. You will be competitive enough to capture demand globally, which is to be able to pull demand away from the likes of China, Japan, and Korea. So that is the aim. I would close this. I don't want to get too much into the guidelines part, but I would briefly say that there are certain things which are written. What do we need to do to go ahead? So all these schemes are in place, but the onus is fundamentally on the industry. It has never happened before that 70,000 crore a government has pumped in to support a shipbuilding industry. It has never happened in the history of India. Now it has happened, but it doesn't stop there. There are challenges like we talked about skilling in terms of capability development, capacity development, etc., access to capital, etc. Government has done some things to put the mechanisms in place. Now it is incumbent upon industry to see how best they can utilize these schemes. There is the one good thing that has happened is there is a national shipbuilding mission that has been set up to focus primarily on how the scheme is going to go forward and how to continue to help the industry on a real-time basis rather than the original system of going to the ministry and trying to create SRO. There's a dedicated mission that has been set up. That is expected to ease a lot of the process flows. There is a lot of interest that has churned. A lot of foreign shipbuilding companies are waiting and watching. Hyundai has already expressed its interest. Other companies are looking to see in which direction it will start to move. And they're very keen on seeing whether they can at least become a part of this journey. While we have done wonderfully well in defense shipbuilding, I think there is a lot of lessons that the commercial shipbuilding industry or the same shipyards who are going to be part of both can take off the great practices that we develop while developing the defense shipbuilding industry in terms of indigenization, in terms of having a dedicated indigenous support program, being a feeder in these hallowed halls. I was telling DG and D just before we met, these hallowed classroom is the biggest feeder of white collar skill to the shipbuilding industry. There are similar institutions in engineering and electrical who have also fed. So that's a lesson to learn. If you are creating an ecosystem and you stay invested in that ecosystem, it will work. And you don't have to look far. The naval shipbuilding industry is a classic example of that. Commercial shipbuilding industry, I'm sure if it takes advantage of these schemes that have come out, and some of you youngsters will go forward and continue to keep pushing this as we go forward, I'm sure it will reach the same heights or probably even get higher than what we're doing in naval shipbuilding right now. With that, I'd like to end my talk. I'm open to any kind of questions that you want to ask. Yes, sir. Sir. Thank you so much, sir. The numbers are quoted as the demand. The scope, yes, given today's craze for the startup and AI and essentially a white collar job than the traditional white collar job is there. It is a challenge. It is a challenge which shipyards face even today. But startup culture exists. Yes, there is innovation possible in design. There is innovation possibility in production. Give you a very simple example how you can use even AI to streamline production processes. As KPMG, we are currently working with one of the shipyards. One huge problem that they have is they have a procurement system, which is say some SAP or some ERP system. They have a system which is some design software. They have some other system which is monitoring production floor activities. Today, not just in India, across the world, we are in a situation where none of these systems are able to talk to each other. It's a huge challenge. And I'll put it in a lighter vein. Most of the software companies design tools which are solutions looking for a problem. They force fit a solution and don't actually customize it to what the shipyards want. So this is a fundamental starting point where it's a live problem. How do you have proliferation of data systems are happening, proliferation of software tools are happening, but the integrated product data environment where these systems are actually talking to each other doesn't exist. It's a huge problem. Nobody's looked at it so far simply because in India, the shipbuilding industry is not big enough. Throughout the world, it is more a strategic industry than a business industry. That's the reason why not too many people have stayed invested. But with this kind of growth, there are several innovative solutions possible at the process level, at the design level, where you can use AI. Today we are in a situation, I'll just again put it in lighter vein. There are organizations which pay expensive amounts to buy an ERP software. But how is it used? From the ERP software, from the design software, the bill of material is downloaded in an Excel sheet, and the Excel sheet is manually fed into the ERP software to generate a purchase order. Today, as we speak, not just in India, across the world, even in China and Japan, it's a little better there, but problems exist. So this is just one of the problems where there is scope for innovation. How do you make an integrated, and why is it a challenge? Unlike auto industry where there is a prototype that is made, so the bill of material is ready. It's like tested prototype. You're just producing and you're able to do very high speed data transfer, very high speed manufacturing actually. In shipbuilding, because of the complex nature, because the design is evolutionary in nature, there is no prototype in place. So the bill of material keeps getting updated as we build the ship. So there will be a situation where initially you ordered some 5,000 items. Somewhere down the line, after 25% of the project has progressed, you realize that you have to order some 2,000 more because the design is evolving. Everything is a manual process. So there is no real intelligent tool that exists that is able to accommodate this kind of dynamic flexibility in the process. That's a hot test bed for innovation and startups. IoT. True. Yeah, purely in manufacturing also, see, like I said, while we are talking of indigenization, there is actual designing a new equipment from scratch. The capability doesn't exist that well in India simply because fundamental skills don't exist. That is where, to create a self-contained, pump motor system for chilled water system, etc. To a manufacturing perspective. True, very true. Need of the hour is that, sir. Sir, point, sir. Very valid point. And I mean, SBFAP. Yes. Sir, very valid point, sir. Very true. The see, when you look at it from our point, from the industry point of view, all these are extremely valid points. We also argued representing the industry that way. If you look at it purely from a government point of view, they have to find a balance. Ultimately, when government money is involved, the need for checks and balances is significantly higher. Because we evolved a system over a period of time, we reached a stage where the government has confidence in the Navy to operate a project with 14 stage payments. We are one of the best, Navy is one of the best customers. We go tell shipyards here, please take the money, please take the money. But if we reach that level of maturity, if this scheme picks up, see, I would say that is the reason why, if you see the way NSBM is constructed, these schemes are not set in stone. These guidelines are not set in stone. You don't have to go back to the highest levels of ministry to change this. The NSBM itself is empowered to update the guidelines. So if there is better uptake and if there is demand, greater demand, 100% it will emerge to a system where it will slowly, the checks and balances are more favorable to the industry. In a sense that, sir, I'll tell you, sir, normally the government should make a guideline that nobody will take it for granted. That is the ideal situation. But unfortunately, because of the history of shipbuilding, they don't want to take chances at the starting point. But over a period of time, I'm sure it will evolve the way Navy's stage payments evolved to a system where it becomes far more friendly. I know, sir, I'm aware of those issues. I mean, there are other issues also. But I think over a period of time, see, what has happened is a lot of things happened very fast in the last 1 year. So too many things, government organizations being government organizations are getting used to so much of information flowing in one go. I'm sure that also over a period of time will settle. DGS is currently literally overwhelmed because there are so many things that has been put on his plate. So I'm sure it will evolve slowly and in a manner that it will become easier for the industry to operate. Yes. Your point is very valid, and just to tell you the way the clusters are being planned. No, so right now, large vessel capacity is there in CSL. If you look at I can tell you because I was part of the way the whole thing evolved. The thought process is, while a big cluster comes up, a big shipyard will come up, they'll build the VLCCs. They are still looking at the concept of modular multi-location construction, which means a small shipyard which cannot build a VLCC can still build a pre-outfitted hull block of a ship. So if you look at that scheme, I can go back and show it to you. If you look at the Greenfield cluster scheme, part of the funding is for creating assets like floating cranes and heavy lift barges, which will essentially do this, what you're talking about. A pre-outfitted hull block will get made in some small shipyard, say in Kakinada or in Chennai. It comes to the cluster. Something can get made in Shaft. Something can get made somewhere in Mangalore. All of them will come together. So in a manner, the government is encouraging the fact that multiple shipyards get involved in the same project. So, and if you look at how you see how the Ulsan shipyard operates, they have 14 dry docks. I mean, I think they have 11 dry docks. They have capacity about 14 million GT per annum, just one shipyard. Okay, that 12 to 14 million, I'm not sure exactly. That If you look at the production of the hull outfit, only about 40-50% happens inside the yard. 50% of it gets built somewhere outside and it's transported and assembled. So they don't, so that is the way going forward. If you want to utilize existing capacity to the best and also utilize the newly created capacity to the best, this approach that you're talking about is necessary. That you build a ship, blocks in one place, assemble it in another place, and maybe berth it in a third place to do the trials and get. So that kind of sharing will happen. See, in a way, it's already happening in the Navy, you know. No, independent. See, I'll tell you, most independent owners, what are they looking at? They are looking that the ship should be delivered of quality and in time. He is not bothered whether you're doing part of it here, part of it there. He only wants the ship. Whether it's SCI or a private owner or a foreign owner, he wants you to meet the quality requirements. He wants you to meet the class requirements, and he wants to get it done in a certain cost. It doesn't matter. So single owner, even SCI is largely a government agency. SCI will be the owner largely. But even private owners won't have a problem if you do this, as long as you bring in efficiency. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Sure, sure. Possibly, no issues. I'm okay. Uh, so this is sorted now. This used to be the case in the old scheme. In the new scheme, there are tranches, there are 4 stages. If you can open up the guidelines, it is very clearly given that the support happens through the construction. After keel laying, a certain amount is placed, certain is done after a certain level of construction, some after delivery, and finally, post delivery, the last tranche is paid. That problem existed in the previous scheme, it's solved now. I already answered that. Uh, 2 meter, see, it is not exactly a hard and fast rule. It is fundamentally the government is looking at as large a chunk as possible. If you're able to build a shipyard with it's not saying that you have to have 2 kilometers. Ideally, if you have 2 kilometers, you'll be able to do it. Because, so, but if you're looking at a cluster of output capacity 1.2 to 1.3 million, GRSE is not, it's a small shipyard. No, that is there, sir. They can come in brownfield scheme. Greenfield is fundamentally conceived with the idea of creating a large self-contained cluster with a large output. It is not specifically meant for, see, one way is 3-4 small shipyards can come and set up in one cluster. It is still possible. In the same cluster, 2 kilometer front, I take 500 meter, you take 400 meter. You can still build 3-4 shipyards in one cluster. Yeah. Okay. Currently, there are no limitations to this, but I can 100% understand where Menon sir is coming from. These are the same worries that the government always has. So it's not, currently there is no limitation which is compelling a shipyard to do this. But I think the existing checks and balances are in such a manner that there is an independent agency which is going to continuously keep evaluating what you're doing. So I think that is reasonably robust mechanism to ensure that the funds that are paid are not diverted or used anywhere else.
Sir, who wanted to speak?
Uh, uh, Hello everyone online. Actually, we received a directive uh, to close the session. So the room was not available. But thanks for joining everyone. I'll be sharing the questions to the speaker, and we will request them to answer all the questions. So we'll be closing the sessions. Apologies for instant closing of the session. Thank you everyone for joining.